Geauxbears Diecast Workshop is the guest host of this Three Blind Mice Invitational. Harolyn chose the Hot Wheels 1970 Monte Carlo for this build. This casting I already had in my pile of cars, as you can see by the back bumper going by there. This one's obviously play-worn. It's not in too terrible a shape, but it did need a little bit of work. I was trying to figure out what I wanted to do with this. And recently I did a redline rattlecan restoration. And so for this one I thought, well, let me convert this to a redline. And this was a real educational experience for me. As you can see there, there's a plastic base on this, metal body, plastic interior. Has two posts, so stripped it and went over it with the wire wheel. You see it cleaned up pretty well. I didn't want to get rid of all the casting lines, that kind of thing, because I'm trying to do a red line here. So we knew the wheels were going to change. That was the one certain thing. So I pulled those old wheels off. And even though the base was chrome, it was in rough shape. So I knew once the wheels were off, I wanted to, and I was trying to preserve the little clips there for what I'm ending up doing later. But I took that base and threw it in the super clean because I thought, well, I got to get rid of this old nasty chrome, and I'll just use the Molotow pin to put chrome on the bumpers later. So dropped that in the super clean and stuck that to the side for a little while. And I was trying to figure out, in the back of my mind, I kept thinking about the wheels as I was doing other things on here. But I polished it up, and I learned a lot doing this. It is far from perfect. And I was talking to Lee, Time Rider, and discussing it. And he mentioned spraying it with primer. And I didn't do that on this. This I was already finished with by the time I discussed it with Lee. But he mentioned spraying primer on it and then sanding the primer off. And, checking it and seeing how it is, cleaning off any primer that is in areas you can't sand. But that's a good way of making sure that it's really smooth and clean. And I thought that was a brilliant idea. So I learned that on this one. And I'm definitely going to try that, excuse me, on the next red line I do. Went digging through my wheels, and I had these old cap style axles and wheels. The axles were shot on this thing. That's obviously why I took it off of another casting. So I thought, well, let me just throw some new axles through those caps and then just put new caps on it. I hadn't thought about doing this before, and it seems like I probably have more of these caps laying around. But this worked really well, and crazy easily, as you're going to see here. Basically, I just feed those caps then through this pin that I'm using for the axle, and I shove that through the body, and then put the cap on the other side. And it made judging the length of the axle crazy easy. Because you just, like you see there, you just then pull that axle out of there and you know exactly where you want to cut it. So I did that for the front and the back. And once I get them on there, and you're going to see this in a few seconds, but I wasn't paying that much attention. But the cap backing, that back part that I took from the old axle on the front wheels, the smaller wheels, was a lot thicker than the one in the front. You can kind of see how thick that darn thing is right there. That's just the back, and it's already looking kind of thick. So I did the fronts, I did the backs, and then when I put both of them on the base there, I realized that the front was just way too wide. There was an excess of plastic on the back of that thing, on those caps, the backs of the caps, whatever you want to call that. So I ended up just sanding those down, and that took a little while. I ended up cutting that front axle that I just created there off and had to redo that. But this really made a big difference. It made the wheels fit so much better. And there you can see what I'm going for. The one on the right was unchanged. The one on the left was after I had sanded it. So it made a much narrower wheel. The windshield was a little rough, so there were a couple spots. I just wet sanded with 3000 grit sandpaper. It's that sponge style sandpaper, the spongy back kind of thing. And I find that works pretty well for the windshields. I don't sand them that often. I don't know if I'm just using a lot of good windshields or, if they're new ones or what. But when I do sand them, I usually will wet sand them with a pretty fine grit sandpaper. And then flits, and, the flits with my finger. And then I buff it up with a microfiber cloth to get it where I want it. So, this part was the usual process that you've seen me do before. And then you know where this is going, don't you? Yep. Gauzy, gauzy, gauzy. Look, there's no JB Weld in this build, so I had to use gauzy. So be sure and check out all the other builders in this build. There will be a recap video on the Three Blind Mice Diecast channel. So be sure and check that out. You can see who else is in the build. Harolyn is in charge of this as the guest host. The first guest host of a Three Blind Mice build, which is pretty cool. You see me put that glass down there, but it wasn't laying flat because of the way that glass is, and I wanted it to be flat, so it was easy enough to adjust just rolling up a corner of that tape and then just protecting it. I did go over that polished body with Metalcast paint, Metalcast blue, and there you see it. Went over it with the Metalcast blue, went over that with a Minwax clear coat. And there you can see how I didn't comment when it was happening on screen, but I did use the Molotov pen to add that chrome. I didn't add any details to it or anything like that because I really was trying to go for a good old redline look. So hopefully you think I hit that. Again, the body isn't perfect, but I learned a lot. And that was such an excellent suggestion by Lee that I can't wait to do that on one of these. And maybe, I'll do that for the National Redline Day event we have coming up in May. I'm really looking forward to that. That's going to be fun. So here it gets thrown together. I think it turned out pretty good. It does kind of look like the red lines of old. Old like me. Jeez. That was a long time ago. Yeah, I am using the screws in the front and the back, just the cap style screws. They work really well. So there you have it. I do like the look. The red lines, there's just something about red line wheels that they just always look so good. A nice fresh set of caps on wheels, and you can't beat it. So here's where we started again, and you'll see where we ended on the turntable here in a few seconds, and there are some glamour shots. I hope you enjoy this video, and I do appreciate all of you watching these and coming along on this journey with me. Be sure and check out the other builders in the Invitational. Again, the Three Blind Mice Diecast channel will have information on that. Special thanks to Harolyn for running this. Again, be sure to check out her channel, Geauxbears Diecast Workshop. She does absolutely beautiful work, and her channel is growing and growing as it should be. Thanks again for watching, and all of you stay safe and healthy out there. I'd like to take a moment also to thank my Patreon subscribers. I really do appreciate all of your support. And we've got some interesting builds coming up. I've got some things on the bench and things in my mind that I want to do. We have the Three Blind Mice Gasland style build coming up in April 17th. That I've got starting with an El Toro Loco casting. I've got that stripped, and I've already got some Tonka wheels on it, so that's going to be interesting. Not quite sure what else is going to show up on it other than obviously some guns that I plan on scratch building. We'll see how that goes. Hopefully it goes well. And then we do have National Redline Day coming up in May. And obviously there's going to be a lot of builds between then. I figure I've got a bone shaker build here in the future that I'm thinking of. And I know some of you are going to shake your heads, but I've got a cool combi build in mind too. So thank you all for watching these videos, and catch you in the next one.